Hello, my name is Devin Jones, and welcome to this edition of the Sparks Tribune Report. Today, in our series on the Bill of Rights, 10-part series, we're talking about the Third Amendment. Cheers.
Cheers. Beer of Rights.
The Beer of Rights. The Beer of Rights. And we're talking about the Third Amendment, and I'm going to lean into the camera, pardon my face being in the camera while I read it, and this one is a short and an easy one. No one essentially disagrees with this. No challenges have been mounted to this. It's uncontroversial. So this is a fairly short video. I will present a certain nuance in a moment. However, the text of the Third Amendment reads, and I quote, "No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner prescribed by law." Basically, the Third Amendment essentially states that no soldier is going to be quartered into a home in a time of peace. And I did want to present two nuances to this.
Okay.
One nuance is that we do quarter soldiers into homes overseas profusely.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we're talking about soldiers being quartered into homes in a time of peace stateside, there's no controversy.
Right.
Easily agreed upon. No American citizen, left, right, or center, is going to disagree with that. But
yeah.
and
maybe a few.
Only extremists, essentially. Only extremists might disagree with this. But essentially, most people who believe in a fair democratic society are not going to disagree with this. But the only nuances I wanted to present are really nuances that I'm going to admit are not covered by the Constitution, and that is overseas when we're quartering soldiers into homes.
Well, you know where this comes from, too. The Revolutionary War.
Well, I'm talking about overseas, like in Iraq and Afghanistan,
right,
when we're breaking down people's doors. Go ahead.
No, this particular precept comes from the fact that the British would take over houses, even though they were maybe not owned by them or anybody who wanted them in there, for that matter. And that's why this particular amendment is in there.
Okay. Well, that I'm not too familiar with. Did you care to elaborate?
No. Well, yeah, I can. No, during the Revolutionary War, the British would take over houses, especially because they figured they were insurrectionists of some sort or another, and then they would.
So this also goes back to probable cause. The probable cause, the various clauses of the Bill of Rights that pertain to the,
yes,
when it comes to having probable cause for invading a house, and we'll get to that in the Fourth Amendment because the Fourth Amendment touches on.
No, we're talking about the British taking over houses.
Okay, right. So do feel free to elaborate.
That's basically what I know about it. I'm just saying that the British had the concept that since they were in control of the country, they could walk in and just sleep in anybody's house. That is my understanding.
Okay, so there are instances where British soldiers would take over people's houses?
Yes, that is my understanding.
Okay.
I don't have any actual evidence for that.
This is your homework, by the way.
I wasn't there.
While you're listening to this?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're just drunk talking about it. You look it up.
Please,
thou informed individuals. By all means.
That is my understanding is why the Third Amendment exists. Because it happened.
Well, I don't doubt that it did. But very interesting concept, and I would not doubt be a cause for the institution of the Third Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
What I wanted to bring up, because the Third Amendment is already in place, and we're looking at this from the, and the whole point of this is from the perspective of a 21st century observer.
As opposed to an 18th century. Yeah.
Precisely. I did want to look at this from another standpoint, and the other standpoint that I wanted to look at this from isn't necessarily a constitutional one, but one that presents a crisis of a conflict of interest. Because while we are guaranteeing our own citizens the right to not be invaded by soldiers in time of peace, etc., etc. We are invading others' homes, private homes, no doubt, overseas, in Iraq, Afghanistan, in Serbia, in Lebanon. Houses are being invaded and doors are being busted down, so we are occupying these homes because they're not guaranteed the same constitutional right to not have their homes invaded in time of peace.
Well, they don't happen to exist on the same continent.
Right. So again, are they granted the same rights?
No.
See, because now we're getting to the heart of another issue: is who guarantees who rights? Does our government guarantee rights? Because the document that we're quoting, the document that we're currently elaborating on, states that the rights are not guaranteed by the government, but rather by this invisible figure called God, who guarantees the document itself.
Now you're really expanding.
Oh, yes, I am. Yes, I am. Unapologetically so. Because the document itself states that these rights are guaranteed by God. And so
to white Americans.
Right. Yes, exactly. Because now we're talking about invading other people's homes, and if we're really going to hold by what the Constitution states and state, while the Constitution states that these are inherent rights granted by God, meanwhile we're invading homes overseas, and our right to invade those homes and bust in those doors and occupy those houses overseas.
You want this to be short, but we're going to get into slavery, racism.
Well, not necessarily a point of the same subject matter, but it does tie into that. What I mainly wanted to discuss, I mean, just as an adjacent subject, adjacent matter to this issue, is basically while we're assigning ourselves these rights, and saying that these rights are God-given rights, we're not giving other nations these same rights.
No, of course not. Why would we?
Well, absolutely. Power corrupts.
We're us, they're them.
Who is it that said that power corrupts and that absolute power corrupts absolutely? Ah, we're familiar, aren't we? Shakespeare.
I know all the quotes.
Shakespeare said that, by the way.
I know all the quotes.
Yes, Shakespeare said that, by the way.
Do you know why they built traffic circles in D.C.?
No, by all means, inform me.
They could put cannon in them.
Pardon?
They could put cannon in them, just in case they had to fight off the masses.
Okay, I'm familiar. I do know the streets in D.C. are laid out in a pentagram. The street map. For
the most part, they are diagonal and horizontal, and then there's the weird ones that are circles and halfway across, whatever you call that. I forget.
Right, but I wanted to discuss that the fact that we give ourselves these rights to not invade internally homes of American citizens. So it's not necessarily constitutional when I mention homes overseas. It's not necessarily a constitutional matter
over there, doesn't it?
But it does call to our own recollection, or at least should the fact that we give ourselves these rights and meanwhile abridge these rights overseas, even while saying that the rights that we have are God-given rights, meaning they should be universal, right? If these rights are God-given,
meaning they should be observed universally.
Yes, exactly. Because if these rights are God-given rights, then they shouldn't necessarily be national rights. If they're God-given rights, then they should be universal, regardless of nation or an ethnic, national background, etc.
Let me ask you this.
So why is it that we grant ourselves these rights and meanwhile overseas abridge these rights every chance that we get?
What are the laws?
For oil money, by the way.
What are those laws in the nation?
What, pardon?
What are those laws in that nation, particularly? Pick one. Afghanistan, Iran. Are you allowed to invade somebody's home?
It doesn't matter. We're the bullies. We don't care what the laws of the nation are. For example, Saudi Arabia has various rights.
Oh, Christ. Don't get me started.
Yes,
Frickin' Arabia.
Yes, I'm getting you started.
Oh,
because,
this is getting me.
Because
this is
Saudi
going to go
Arabia,
longer than that. This is going longer than 15 minutes.
Well,
for warranted reasons. One of the most racist places.
For warranted
reasons. And is
reasons.
also responsible for creating the people who did 9/11.
No.
Yes.
Not Saudi Arabia. No, and no. That's one of the that's a popular misconception.
Oh, okay.
Because no, it's a popular misconception. We attacked what nations again? When it came to 9/11, we attacked what? Iraq, Iran. Did we attack any nations?
Kuwait.
No, not with regard to 9/11. We didn't attack. Okay. We did. Yeah, the attack on Kuwait was not with pertaining to 9/11. But we did not attack any nations that had anything to do with 9/11. However, you mentioned Saudi Arabia
because most of the pilots are Saudi Arabians.
Yeah,
are
multiple
hijackers,
of them, but were trained by the FBI. Our FBI.
Oh, sure. So was what's his bloody name? The guy who finally killed. Not Gaddafi.
No, Gaddafi was 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
You're talking about Saddam Hussein.
No, not Saddam Hussein. Well, yeah, we trained him too.
Yes, we did. Our FBI, our own FBI, trained him and then assassinated him. But at any rate, but basically my point is that we give ourselves these rights and call them God-given rights, and then not respect those same so-called God-given rights overseas. While we invade home after home, like when you join the military, and I'm speaking as someone, by the way, who was trained on how to break down a door, how to clear a room, you know.
Good to know in case we have to break down a door or clear a room.
Yeah, won't be happening. Anyhow, no, as someone who went through that training, I can tell you the Army is trained on how to break down doors and occupy houses. And we do this overseas while telling ourselves in our own nation that we have a God-given right, meaning it should be universal, not just national. If this right is God-given, then it should be a universal right.
That would be nice, wouldn't it?
To not have a soldier quartered into your home, etc., etc.
Would be
but
nice,
we don't respect these things. We don't respect these things. Not when it comes to other nations. We only respect them when it comes to our own.
I doubt seriously we respect them here either.
Secondly, the second thing I wanted to posit. Did you want to say something though?
No, go ahead.
Okay. But the second thing that I wanted to posit is a militarized police force. Because our police force... Yes, yes, I wanted to get into that. Goddamn right I did.
You really want to drag this thing out, don't you?
No, it's going to be a pretty short video.
It's
going to be a pretty short video, but...
No, I have a real problem with that.
But our militarized police force wants to continue to break down doors, arrest people, and harass people, and treat people like garbage and this is on American soil, by the way. This is on American soil.
Or shooting people. By breaking into the wrong apartment.
People have been shot in the head from outside their apartment. People have been their apartments invaded. Why? Generally because they're people of color. Yes, we're getting into that. Damn it. Yes.
We're going to stick to the Third Amendment.
But that's relevant, is it or is it not?
It's certainly relevant.
Because our militarized police force continues to invade people's homes. And you can't call them an army, so they're exempt from these constitutional rules. But nonetheless, people get shot. People have their homes invaded. So they tend to be exempt from this Third Amendment.
Well, there's nobody sleeping on their floor.
What do you mean?
Well, that's technically what this was.
What do you mean? I'm specifically...
You have to be allowed into the home And technically, what this was at the time was
Right, and
soldiers were quartered in the homes.
Right, and we'll get into some of that in the Fourth Amendment and the Fifth Amendment when we're talking about how a home should be entered. If there is a cause to enter the home, you need a search warrant, a judge's signature. You need probable cause. All of that will be gotten into in the Fourth and the Fifth
and Democratic bastard.
And the Sixth Amendment.
And that's basically where it all.
And yes, I am a Democratic bastard.
I'm saying.
But
the Third Amendment, like I said, was because the British were taking over homes and sleeping in them.
Right, and if I didn't discuss any nuance, then this would be a very short video. But there is nuance to be discovered and nuance to be discussed, you know.
Go ahead.
And I basically just wanted to discuss how, via unconstitutional means, a constitutional amendment is breached when a militarized police force breaches individuals' homes. Generally, black and brown bodies are killed. And that's a fact of nature. That's a fact of society.
There was a case many years ago, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, where the police came banging on the door and broke it down, did not announce themselves as police. And the black man who was terrified pulled a gun and got shot and killed.
Right, and that's like many other stories that we hear in the news.
That's around.
There's another story that's very similar to that, where a black man was shot and killed inside of his own house. In fact, the Boogaloo Boys. Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I've heard of them.
Okay, well, the Boogaloo Boys, who the mainstream media has abjected.
Okay.
Has absolutely, with strenuous acidity, gone against. The Boogaloo Boys, who Jimmy Dore has interviewed, and I engaged in a group chat with multiple of them. Jimmy Dore interviewed one Boogaloo Boy. I did a group chat with multiple Boogaloo Boys. And you can read the Boogaloo Boy group chat with multiple of them on my website. Multiple of them agreeing on very important matters of America, of what it means to be an American, what it means to be a revolutionary, what it means to be an American citizen that believes in democracy. These are not extremists.
Okay.
But if you read the mainstream press, Boogaloo Boys are extremists.
Wonderful.
And so I'll be the first to address that, because they're not extremists if you talk to them, like I did. I talked to multiple of them in the group chat. All they are is adamant supporters of the same principles that you and I are sitting here right now in chat supporting these same ideas. That's all they are, is adamant supporters of these same principles. But the mainstream press will have you to believe that they're not, that they're extremists. But at any rate,
I will take a look. Yes, we've gone completely off topic.
Not completely. But I can wrap this particular subject matter up. And I'm going to read the Third Amendment one more time before wrapping this up entirely. And I quote, "No soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner prescribed by law." And
who can argue with that?
No, the constitutionality of it, and specifically referring to within the states and within our own homes here in the United States, there is no challenge to be mounted. Pretty much everybody, left, right, or center, is going to agree with that. The only nuances that I wanted to project were our own contradictions of thought when it comes to the way we approach people overseas, and the way that our militarized police force breaches this, because they're not considered a militarized police, a militarized force, and they breach that. So with those nuances in mind, I basically...
here's the
Otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward amendment.
Oh, it's pretty damn straight.
It's straightforward.
Here is the word quartered. In other words, you cannot
quartered in this particular context. Quartered means to be rallied toward. They're rallied toward these homes. In other words, the government is not allowed to rally troops toward individual homes. That's it. There's no conspiracy there. There's no conspiracy there.
That's the
it's only saying that no government is allowed that our government is not allowed to rally troops toward individual homes.
We'll call it the happiest.
Again, this is very straightforward.
We'll call it the happiest amendment,
or the most straightforward.
Yeah,
like again, there's no disagreement that's going to be mounted by
straightforward is happy.
The left, whether it be the far left, the far right, the center left, the center right, the centrist. There's just not going to be a threat mounted toward the Third Amendment. It's pretty straightforward. Again, the only nuance I wanted to present was our own contradiction of ideas when it comes to the way we approach people overseas, and our militarized police force and the way we approach people with our militarized police force here at home. That's basically it that I wanted to cover.
All right.
With regard to that.
Luckily, there are no policemen sleeping downstairs.
Yet.
There's one there across the street, and there's one there down at the end of the cul-de-sac.
Right. But anyway, again.
Alrighty.
Cheers. Where's your beverage?
Trying to be social, not drunk.
The point of this is to be drunk.
Have a great, well, maybe later. I don't even know what time it is. Have a great night, roadies.
And again, my name is Devin Jones, and you can find me on Twitter at the user handle provided in the description box below, and you can find the Sparks Tribune at the website provided likewise in the description box below. And you have a wonderful evening.